Hello, this is Mrs. Richardson, here to help you study for Jamestown VS.3. In what year was the first permanent English settlement in North America founded? The answer is 1607. What did England hope to find in America? The answer is silver and gold. Remember, everything about the Jamestown colony was all about the economy or making money. Jamestown was primarily a blank venture. The answer is economic. Once again, it was all about the money. England wanted to establish an American colony to increase its blank and blank. The answer is wealth and power. They were in a battle with Spain and France, trying to gain the most wealth and power. An American settlement would furnish blank blank that could not be grown or obtained in England while opening new markets for trade. The answer is raw materials. England had used almost all of their own trees, and it would take a long time for those trees to regrow. And so therefore, if they could get a colony started in the New World, they would have all the trees they needed. Who financed the settlement in Jamestown? The answer is the stockholders of the Virginia Company of London. These were the merchants who got together and formed a company to go ask the king for permission to settle a colony and then paid for that colony, the stockholders of the Virginia Company of London. What influenced the decision to settle at Jamestown? This was decided by its location and physical characteristics. It was inland, they thought they had a good supply of fresh water, the water was deep enough for ships to dock, and they also could protect and defend themselves against attack by sea. Today, Jamestown is located on a blank in the James River. The answer today is island. It was originally founded on a peninsula, but because of erosion, this has now become an island, which is completely surrounded by water. One reason Jamestown was chosen for settlement was the water along the shore was deep enough for blank to dock. The answer is ships. It was very important that ships could dock near Jamestown because supply ships would be coming in and they would be sending ships out with raw materials and things for trade. What became the first permanent English settlement in North America in 1607? The colony's name was Jamestown, named after King James. When the settlers arrived in 1607, Jamestown was located on a narrow peninsula bordered on three sides by the blank blank. And the answer is the James River. Jamestown was chosen for settlement because the location could be easily defended from attack by blank from the blank. Okay, they could defend themselves from attack by the sea from the Spanish. We know that England and Spain were in several wars and battles with each other, and so they were making sure that they could protect themselves. The King of England granted charters to the blank, 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 blank. And the answer is the Virginia Company of London, the group of merchants who came and asked the king for permission and paid for the settlement. The charters from the King of England gave the Virginia Company the right to establish a blank in North America. The answer is a settlement. That settlement became known as Jamestown. The charters from the King of England extended blank rights to the colonists. The answer is English rights. This provided them with the rights that they needed, but it also kept them under the king's control. Citizen representatives sent to the General Assembly were called what? And the answer is burgesses. These were the two people that were chosen or voted on by the people to represent them at the General Assembly. By the 1640s, the burgesses became a separate legislative body called the blank of blank. That became the House of Burgesses. They eventually moved away from meeting with the governor and the governor's council and would meet alone in this House of Burgesses. The current Virginia General Assembly dates from the establishment of the House of Burgesses at Jamestown in what year? The answer is 1619. Remember, 1619 is the beginning of the red letter year where three very important events took place: the establishment of government, the arrival of women, and the arrival of Africans. In 1619, who were able to take part in government? Only certain free men had a right to take part. Women were not allowed to take part, or people who were indentured servants or slaves. As Jamestown grew, the system of blank evolved. The answer is government. Which assembly in 1619 included two representatives from each of the divisions of Virginia, along with the governor's council and the governor? That was the General Assembly. Remember, the three groups that met at the General Assembly in 1619 was the governor, the governor's council, and the burgesses. The House of Burgesses later became the blank blank of Virginia, which continues to this day. The answer is the General Assembly. In what year did additional women arrive in Jamestown? That would be 1620. This was one of the events that took place in the red letter year from 1619 to 1620. Who arrived in Jamestown against their will? Africans. Africans were captured in Africa, brought to the New World by the Portuguese sailors. They were originally from Angola, Africa, and they were brought here against their will. What was the first elected legislative body in America called? This was the House of Burgesses. This was the first group of government officials that were voted on by the people. What legislative or law-making body gave the settlers the opportunity to control their own government? Once again, this was the House of Burgesses. They were legislative, law-making, and they also were elected by the people. Name two things that impacted the Jamestown settlement with the arrival of women in 1620. Number one, they could establish families. And number two, it made Jamestown a more permanent settlement. People weren't as easy to go back when they were families. African men and women from what is present-day Angola were captured by what type of sailors? The answer is Portuguese. They were Portuguese sailors from Portugal. The arrival of Africans made it possible to expand which economy? That would be tobacco. It was because they needed more workers to grow the tobacco crop to make more money that the Africans were brought here and sold into slavery. Name the reasons why the settlers chose the site at Jamestown. Number one, they believed it had a good supply of fresh water. Number two, it could easily be defended from attack by sea by the Spanish. And the water along the shore was deep enough for ships to dock, allowing supply ships to come in and ships to go out, taking things back to England. The English settlers found life in Jamestown to be blank than they had expected. They found it to be much harder than they thought it was going to be. The settlers lacked some blank necessary to provide for themselves. And the answer is skills. They did not have the skills necessary on how to hunt, fish, and survive the elements. Another good reason Jamestown was chosen for the settlement was they believed they had a good supply of fresh water. It turned out that the water actually was brackish because it was a mixture of fresh and salt water, which caused them to have many diseases. The King of England had the power to grant blank, allowing settlement in North America. And the answer is charters. A charter is a written permission from the king allowing the Virginia Company of London to start their colony. The site they chose to live on was blank and lacked safe blank blank. The answer is the land was marshy, which means it was a wetland, and they were lacking fresh drinking water because the water was brackish. Many of the settlers died of blank and blank. The answer is starvation and disease. How did the native people and the English settlers interact? Captain John Smith initiated trading relationships with the native people, and so then they were able to trade back and forth. Who initiated those trading relationships with the Powhatans? That was Captain John Smith. Blank believed that the English and American Indians could live in harmony. And that was Pocahontas, the daughter of Chief Powhatan. The English exchanged what three items with the native people for food? In other words, this is what the English gave to the Native Americans, while the American Indians gave them food. That was tools, pots, and copper for jewelry. If you notice, all of these things were made out of metal, and the metal was what the Native Americans really wanted. Blank blank arrived, which helped to ensure the survival of the settlers. And the answer is the two supply ships. It brought the supplies and it brought new people to the colony as well as the new governor. Unfortunately, the new people were once again gentlemen. Who developed a friendship with the colonies that helped them survive? That was Pocahontas, Powhatan's daughter. The Powhatans introduced new crops to the English, including blank and blank. The answer is corn and tobacco. Corn would help feed them, and tobacco would make them money. Who led the Jamestown settlement with strong leadership? That was Captain John Smith. Fortunately, because of him, we still have the colony of Jamestown. Name four changes that resulted in the survival of the colony. 1. The forced work program of John Smith, who said, if you don't work, you don't eat. The strong leadership of Captain Smith, the arrival of the two supply ships, and the emphasis on agriculture instead of searching for gold. This is the end of part 1. Please continue for part 2.